We don't have very many meetings like this, This is really cool. I kind of like it in a way, Kind of fun. I kind of get the idea that the opinion of SB 54 is that people like parts of it and they don't like other parts of it.
Actually, I don't think he likes it at all.
She doesn't?
I don't think he does.
No? Okay. He's talking to, that's something good. Think about that when we're going to talk about what to say to Keller.
The only thing that changed was Trump got in, and if he had we wouldn't even be discussing that. We'd still have immigration laws.
Well,
ICE isn't going away. I mean, that's
right. Well, let's not bring that into this. This is a state issue here.
Yeah, but it's true.
All right, so what about AB 450? Everybody know what that is? Oh boy, here we go, AB 450. Another state law. I love this one because this one I think is even more intrusive than the other one. Name of the law is Employment Regulation Immigration Worksite Enforcement Action. How do you pronounce this guy's name? Written by T? And approved by Governor Brown on the 5th of October 2017. About the same. It's only 4 pages long. It's a lot smaller. But I thought it was real interesting because I went out and I looked at the California Department of Industrial Relations, and in order for them to post the frequently asked questions, it took them 7 pages to answer the questions for a 4-page law, and they changed the name of it to an Immigrant Worker Protection Program Act, Immigrant Worker Protection Act. Well, that's interesting. Now, here's what it does. Except as otherwise required by federal law, we're lawyers speaking, an employer or a person acting on behalf of an employer shall not provide voluntary consent to an immigration enforcement agency to enter any non-public area of a place of labor. This section does not apply if the immigration agent has a judicial warrant.
But they always had this. It was up, if we tried to go into a factory to interview employees, it was up to the owner of the factory, whoever had control of the factory, to decide whether to give you permission to come in.
This says you can't. No, this says you can't. This says you cannot give them permission.
That's the difference.
That's the difference.
You're making them what they're doing is making it harder. The immigration.
Well,
first of all, they'll have to arrest a bunch of people.
Well, hold on now. No. This is going to be a civil penalty. An employer who violates the law shall be subjected to a civil penalty of $2,000 up to $5,000 for the first violation, $5,000 up to $10,000 for each subsequent violation.
And this is the state of California saying that if you cooperate.
This is the state of California. All right, now, the exclusive authority to enforce this section, of course, is the state of California, and they're going to enforce it through civil action, which means they're going to have to sue, right? Okay. So this has to do with the U.S. Constitution, 4th Amendment. And remember all the way back when we were talking about this, we said there's really 3 entities we're talking about. We're talking about the federal government, we're talking about the state, and we're talking about the people. Those are 3 distinct different categories of groupings as applies in the U.S. Constitution. It says the right of the people, not the right of the state, not the right of the federal government, but the right of the people to secure in their possession houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath of affirmation and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. So it says the people are granted this right by the Constitution of the United States, not the state. So if the state is now telling you that you have records that you cannot show anybody except under a certain situation, they have seized your records. That's a Constitution violation. That violates the Constitution of the United States.
And that's what the federal government's saying.
The Fourth Amendment originally enforces the notion that each man's home is his castle, but now, if we were writing it today, we would say each man or woman's home is their castle. And from unreasonable searches and seizures of the property, a warrantless search may be lawful if an officer has asked and has given consent to the search for the objects of interest are in plain view. So if the objects of the interest always are in plain view, you don't need a warrant. And of course, if you get permission. So SB 450 takes ownership of your business records in California. Oh, I'm sure this is going to be great. This is going to be, yes, sir.
To clarify, in AB 450, wasn't there also a stipulation that if a business owner was told that ICE was going to be coming in, they had to notify their employees
Yes.
when the search was going to happen, or they would be liable?
Yes. Yes. In 17 languages or whatever it was. Yes. You're absolutely true. I'm only focusing on this one area, but yes, you're absolutely correct. I mean, I didn't want this to go on all night, but yes, you are absolutely correct. But I think this is the part that I think is the worst, is the fact that they are seizing possession of your records and saying that they're going to put restrictions on them, even though they don't belong to them, belong to you. So I find AB 450 more troubling than SB 54. And this morning, when I had a discussion with Mr. Keller, I said, have you read AB 450? And he said, no, what is it? And I told him, and he was going to go read it. And I said, that's even, to me, it's more troubling because, you know, AB 54 directs state employees. That's one level of doing business. The state directing their employees, because all law enforcement personnel are their employees. And but AB 450 attempts to make constitutional decisions for me or the public. And plus, it's only intended, you only make that decision because you want to protect people that are here legally. It's not here to make your life safer.
Shouldn't that say directs for state employers, not employees? Because the employer is the one with the...
No, SB 54.
Oh, okay, I read that.
SB 54 talks about law enforcement, which are employees of the state. And AB 450 is something that deals with the public. So I can just see what happens now. You know, and also in AB 450, it also says you cannot go back and relook at a person's immigration status. Now, I don't know about you, but anybody here work for an aerospace company? All right? How many times did you get different clearances? And every single time you got another clearance, what did they do? Actually, they got more intrusive than they did the last time, right? I remember the last one I did asked me to list every place I'd lived since 1932, which was pretty tough.
Also goes if you get a promotion, you go through another background check.
So it certainly is going to be interesting, particularly if you see a big company like you know, Lockheed or Hughes or and they want to try that on them. Those guys have lawyers on retainer. That's just gonna you'll watch the fur fly then. So anyway, anybody has any other opinions about AB 450? Yes.
All right, so I'm obviously very young, and every time I apply for a job, they always ask, are you here legally? Do you have, if you aren't or are, if you're not a documented citizen, do you have papers to say you can work here legally? And every job that I've gone to, they needed a picture of my driver's license. They need it written down. They take a scanned copy of it, every single job. So the employers know before you start working there if you're documented or not, or if you can work or not. Especially if you are, even if you are documented, they need to know, are you on Social Security? What is going on? Like, let me know you. So every employer knows beforehand who they're hiring.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Especially if you go to work in an aerospace company or like when I had worked with Litton for 40 years, but when I worked with Litton for 40 years, I started out with a confidential clearance, then I had a secret clearance, top secret clearance, and every time you went through the same nonsense of proving it all over again because you had to go through. And then the FBI comes to your house and interviews your neighbors, and you show up there that afternoon, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, the FBI's been here. What did you do?"
Well, what did California just do? They just started issuing driver's licenses.
So,
Legal evidence.
anybody thinking about? Is anybody thinking about what they're going to tell the council about how they should handle this at the next council meeting? Anybody want to say anything about it?
I just want to clarify the AB 450. I was familiar with that, and so I am a business owner and I have employees. And anytime I have a new employee, they are all required to sign and fill out an I-9 and provide me with all documentation. And it clearly states that should any agency, come in and require that they will come and check, and I have to provide these forms. So are you telling me with this AB 450 that I don't have to provide the forms and I have to inform I'm a little confused as to
They're saying if
this interpretation, what your interpretation is.
no, I don't think that they're changing any of the initial things that you do. What they're saying is that if federal immigration agents come to your door and just out of the clear blue sky and say, "I want to go look at your employee records," that you are not supposed to by this law. It puts you in state jeopardy if you go ahead and say, "Yeah, it's okay, go ahead and do it." They say, "No, I want you to have a judicial warrant." Now, if you're a medium-sized company, or even if you're a large company, and you go and you do that, I can guarantee you that when they show up, they're going to look twice as hard as they would have. Huh? Yeah, they get a federal warrant, they're going to come back and they're going to look at twice as hard. So I don't know what's going to happen here.
Lawyer that I can, if a federal agent comes to my business and says, "Show me all your forms and I want to check and make sure everyone that's working here is legal," that I can't ask for a search warrant?
You're not, you're not allowed, if you obey this law, you are not allowed to grant access to those federal immigration agents unless they have a federal warrant.
I actually don't have a problem with that.
Well, I wouldn't either, because I would have tried to do everything I was supposed to have done. This to me is not only not very smart from a standpoint of the business owners and what kind of repercussions they would get from the federal guys once they come back, or because they may just decide that they get a federal warrant and look for more stuff, or I think what's going to happen, this is going to get overturned, but we'll just have to wait and see. So what should we tell our city council? We go on position that
They've probably already made up their mind.
Your place of business, they're gonna have a line. They're not gonna just walk in and say, "We wanna see all of your documents for your home."
And as they put in your home, if someone came, say, to your home and said, "Let me come in," you would ask for a search warrant. That would be your right, your constitutional right.
Well,
And
who's
if that is
winning in
something
all
that
this?
huh?
presented-
Who's winning in all this?
Winning?
Yeah, who's the winners? It's just the
I think this is.
laws, they really didn't need to be created. They
Well,
gone with the flow, and it's
my own opinion.
been going around here raiding all the factories.
No, my own opinion is that this is all bluster. This is all bluster. This is all. I mean, let's call this a sanctuary state law so that we can get people on both sides of this issue yelling at each other, because most of the time that's what happens. You've been very civil. Everybody here has been very civil. And you've discussed it, and I think you're going to leave here. You've learned more about the law than you knew when you got here. Is that true? Okay. And then you can make up your own mind as to what you want to tell the council. You might, whatever. I certainly would want to tell the council that I think that paragraph in red has got to go. And I think that AB 450 violates the Constitution of the United States, taking rights away from me. I want them to go fight it. But that's just me. You can decide on whatever it is that you like.
I have a question I would prioritize their attention. If it was up to me, I would prioritize their attention to things that matter.
These guys work for the county.
I don't,
Department has nothing to.
I don't think our,
We want our city to be,
I don't think our,
I don't particularly, this is my opinion, want the city that I live in, that I love, that I feel safe in, that I feel like, you know, as a community, we come together and work together and be at peace, I hope. I don't want this city being labeled, and I don't want the perception of our city to be labeled as a city that makes decisions based on fear-mongering or racism or implicit bias.
okay.
There are lots of areas in this community that are very, very bad and have a lot of crime.
And
A lot of
it's
crime.
not all
It's
about
affecting our
illegal
children.
immigration, and it's
No,
not all about.
I'm not saying.
Well, oh, no, let's not get off track. But I do not believe that our law enforcement activities, our sheriff's department, is doing illegal immigration sweeps. No, I don't think they're doing that at all. So the only question is, when someone is in jail and they're about to be released, if there's a detainer, should they be turned over? That's the only question I think that there is. Yes.
But there's no jail within the city limit. So the city of Santa Clarita has no interest in prisoners being released.
Well, look. Well, no, wait a minute. Now hold on, because when we contract with the sheriff's department, I understand that everything that the sheriff's department does for us is not here locally. And as a matter of fact, that's why whenever we start having a discussion about should we have our own police department, and they trade off the cost, because right now in the sheriff's department, all the sheriff's services are not here in Santa Clarita. We do not have a homicide division in Santa Clarita. We don't even have a major burglary division in Santa Clarita. I know people that don't report burglaries to their businesses because it takes too long for the sheriffs to react, and they have to close down their business for too long, and so they just eat it. But that doesn't mean that we don't have influence because we contract for those services as well. Right? So we have some influence on this. I mean, I realize we don't have, it's not our city council is not going to be able to snap their fingers and make a change. But at the same time, if they join in with a lot of other entities, maybe we get something done. Yes, sir.
You know what I think our city council should do with this issue
Okay.
in particular, because we don't really have any jurisdiction on this, would be, also it's Santa Clarita. It would be like if my organization wrote a resolution and sent it to Santa Clarita. I hold no power over our city council. It would be interesting as if we kind of let it pass, waited to see what this law is really going to do to our city. If it holds, because you know what, when marijuana was legalized in our city, they waited immediately. They acted immediately to do an emergency moratorium, and they said we need a way to study the effects. And we had a year ban to study the effects, and we did another ban to study more effects. So maybe they should be doing the same here. We should study to see what this law is actually going to be doing. Are we going to see an increase in crime? Are we going to be seeing an increase in drug use in Santa Clarita? An increase in anything? A decrease? And then are we really going to be opposed forward, or are we just going to let this sit? Because that is really what we should be doing. What is going to be best for Santa Clarita? Best for our citizens? Is this really going to affect Santa Clarita at all?
Okay, well, Andrew, does that mean that the only option is to either support it in its entirety or oppose it in its entirety? Is there things in between?
There's resolutions that the city council can take.
Okay.
And
Joe,
say
that makes some sense, because it's kind of all for naught. If you look at the cities that are actually opposing this, they all have their own PDs, or except for Orange County, and they have their own sheriff's department, they have their own jail. And it's also like Escondido, it's Los Alamitos, it's Huntington Beach, or one of those out there. They all have their own police departments. Like Burbank has its own PD, Glendale has its own PD. And they're all incorporated cities. That's why we're looking at this, because we're an incorporated city, but we're new in that we don't have our own police department, which we will eventually.
Well, what? Doug?
Yeah, no, they're all, everything's.
The council actually directed city staff to do a lot of this research and present a report to the council. So if you go on the website the weekend before May 8th, you'll be able to look at the agenda report, and hopefully all that research will be available.
All right, well, that's another option. I mean, when you go out and you read the agenda report and the recommendations of the staff.
Will have their advice or direction.
Well, at least I hope that you would be able to be more informed when you read that information and so forth.
Let's see what the staff does.
I agree with Anthony that it makes sense to wait to see if there's any ramifications for our community. I mean, we do have more important things to deal with. We have people speeding.
What it really is political. They're trying to decide, Santa Cruz is trying to decide whether they want to be more democratic with the Democrats, or if they want to, there's a lot of.
Well, here again, I don't want to do that.
It's not about politics.
Yes, it is.
Well,
It's very much against politics.
well, I tell you what, it's getting close. It's getting to the end of this session, and I really appreciate this. This has been a great conversation. I don't think that there has been this many people in a room that have had a reasonable discussion like this in a very, very long time. And so I know that we've had people that are on both sides of this issue, and I think that you guys did a really good job of laying out what your position is, and at the same time being respectful of others. So I'd like you all to give yourself a big round of applause.